Ciao ragazzi, benvenuti nella prima puntata di The Stanley Parable. Come potete vedere, come primo gioco ho deciso di portare questa piccola chicca trovata su Steam, molto interessante, di cui avevo già sentito parlare e del quale conosco abbastanza poco. Nel senso che non mi ricordo la storia, non mi ricordo cosa succede, so che ci sono molti finali e che di questi possiamo provare a cercarli tutti o soltanto alcuni. L'obiettivo sarebbe in teoria seguire le indicazioni del nostro narratore, ma meno lo facciamo più divertente il gioco, quindi direi di iniziare qua.
This is the story of a man named Stanley. Stanley worked for a company in a big building where he was employee number 427. Employee number 427's job was simple. He sat at his desk in room 427 and he pushed buttons on a keyboard. Orders came to him through a monitor on his desk, telling him what buttons to push, how long to push them, and in what order. This is what employee 427 did every day of every month of every year. And although others might have considered it soul-rending, Stanley relished every moment that the orders came in, as though he had been made exactly for this job. And Stanley was happy. And then one day, something very peculiar happened. Something that would forever change Stanley. Something he would never quite forget. He had been at his desk for nearly an hour when he realized that not one single order had arrived on the monitor for him to follow. No one had showed up to give him instructions, call a meeting, or even say hi. Never in all his years at the company had this happened, this complete isolation. Something was very clearly wrong. Shocked, frozen solid, Stanley found himself unable to move for the longest time. But as he came to his wits and regained his senses, he got up from his desk and stepped out of his office.
Quindi abbiamo iniziato, siamo dentro e come prima cosa io direi di provare a non muoverci, visto che il narratore ci ha detto di uscire dall'ufficio. Rimaniamo fermi a fissare la porta. Se dovesse fallire questo tentativo di rimanere fermo a lungo, taglierò questa parte, ma non lo so, vedremo. Nel frattempo diamo un'occhiata all'ufficio, abbiamo dei raccoglitori, una lampada messa un po' a culo là in fondo, una bellissima tazza con scritto odio il lunedì, il mio numero, molto importante, temperamenti, fogli, cartelline, raccoglitori, un bellissimo computer, su cui infatti non abbiamo nessun ordine, la mia sedia, che deve essere scomodo passare così tante ore su questa sedia, che non ha neanche i braccioli, zero, talmente poveri non avere i braccioli, e il nostro telefono. Usciamo.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo. No matter how hard Stanley looked, he couldn't find a trace of his co-workers.
Beh, hanno lasciato un nuovo computer acceso. E lui invece non ha neanche un computer. Poverino impiegato 432. Sarà il mio preferito solo perché quello che odiano tutti in ufficio, dei fogli per terra. Il paradiso qua fuori, perché un'illuminazione del genere non so dove possa essere, dove si possa trovare. Un bellissimo ufficio vuoto, altri computer, schermi, porte tutte chiuse. E proverei ad aprire anche queste, ma credo siano tutte chiuse. Direi di proseguire dritto. Questa stanza chiusa, chiave anche questa. E anche questa. Stiamo diminuendo il numero delle stanze. Comunque a 437 siamo passati alla 416. Qua alla 15. E in tutte non c'è nessuno. Anzi qua sembra che stessero facendo una seduta di terapia. Con il corridoio con la 483. Quindi vuol dire che la pianta dell'edificio è un po' sminchia.
When Stanley came to a set of two open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Mamma non mi ha mai insegnato la differenza fra destra e
This was
sinistra.
not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. Perhaps he wanted to stop by the employee lounge first, just to admire it.
Un altro computer acceso. Sì, comunque la sala dipendenti mi ispira molto, signor narratore, quindi Fermiamoci lì. Anzi, apriamo... Ok, chiusa. Wow, che bella.
Ah, yes, truly a room worth admiring. It had really been worth the detour after all, just to spend a few moments here in this immaculate, beautifully constructed room. Stanley simply stood here, drinking it all in. Yes, really, really worth it being
Dollari.
here in the room. A room so utterly captivating that even though all your co-workers have mysteriously vanished, here you sit looking at these chairs and some paintings. Really worth it.
È molto acido, oserei dire,
At
quest'uomo.
this point, Stanley's obsession with this room bordered on creepy and reflected poorly on his overall personality. It's possible that this is why everyone left.
Grazie.
But at last, he'd had enough of the amazing room and took the first open door on his left to get back to business.
E qua siamo alle 452, cioè ho visto che stavano aumentando lungo il corridoio. Quindi è davvero una planimetria molto particolare questa. E qua mi consiglia di andare a sinistra o dritto. Io andrei dritto.
Stanley was so bad at following directions, it's incredible he wasn't fired years ago.
Ma prima o poi proveremo anche a prendere le altre direzioni, le altre strade, ma giusto per divertimento. Guardiamo cosa succede. È divertente notare, se notate bene, c'è questo divieto di saltare giù perché c'è il rischio di morte e potrei addirittura avere una multa di 5.000 dollari, scusate, non euro, dollari, se dovessi suicidarmi. Cosa che io ho
Look,
sempre
Stanley,
detestato i
I think
divieti.
perhaps we've gotten off on the wrong foot here.
E quindi proviamo a
I'm not
lanciarci.
your enemy, but in his eagerness to prove that he is in control of the story and no one gets to tell him what to do, Stanley leapt from the platform and plunged to his death. Good job, Stanley. Everyone thinks you are very powerful.
Bene, quindi abbiamo visto che saltare giù dal cargo ci fa uccidere. Procediamo? E proviamo.
Stanley knew the office layout like the back of his hand. It was only a matter of time before he found the others, wherever they were. Just a matter of time.
Adesso proverò ad andare un po'...
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
un po' a caso per vedere i vari finali. Si punta magari adesso sul seguire un pochettino il narratore, giusto per vedere cosa succede se si seguono effettivamente i suoi consigli. E qua stiamo ancora diminuendo le porte, anche se questa per esempio non ha un numerino, c'è sempre il paradiso che illumina, ci illumina d'immenso.
Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office, hoping he might find an answer there.
Quindi questa è la sala riunioni tutta vuota, queste bellissime lavagne con un povero dipendente a cui hanno spostato la scrivania, a uno che non è stato abbastanza efficiente, e questo qua è il povero capo che cerca di mantenere, come dire, l'argomento, l'attenzione sull'argomento, scusate, cerca di mantenere l'attenzione sullo stesso argomento. Qua gli appuntamenti, questi raccoglitori tutti distrutti, le piante, fotocopiatrici tutte un po' rovinate, cioè sembra quasi che si abbandonano da, non dico anni, ma mesi. Strano. Cioè, o comunque sia tutto molto vecchio. Bene, procediamo. Abbiamo il deposito delle scope.
Stanley stepped into the broom closet, but there was nothing here, so he turned around and got back on track. There was nothing here. No choice to make, no path to follow, just an empty broom closet. No reason to still be here.
Sì, ma mi ispira. Guarda, mi chiudo anche dentro.
It was baffling that Stanley was still just sitting in the broom closet. He wasn't even doing anything. At least if there was something to interact with, he'd be justified in some way. As it is, he's literally just standing there doing sweet FA.
Tradotto con un CDN, non diciamo che cosa fosse.
Are you really still in the broom closet? Standing around doing nothing? Why?
Perché me l'hai
Please offer
chiesto.
me some explanation here. I'm genuinely confused.
E vabbè, anch'io spesso sono confuso, non so cosa dire. Mi spiace, cioè non è il mio obiettivo
You do
confonderti.
realize there's no choice or anything in here, right? If I'd said Stanley walked past the broom closet, At least you would have had a reason for exploring it to find out. But it didn't even occur to me because literally this closet is of absolutely no significance to the story whatsoever.
Ma possiamo
I never
fidarti di
would have
te?
thought to mention it.
Possiamo effettivamente fidarci di te noi? Non credo.
Maybe to you this is somehow its own branching path. Maybe when you go talk about this with your friends you'll say, "Oh, did you get the broom closet ending? The broom closet ending was my favourite." I hope your friends find this concerning.
Grazie. Ci sto provando. Magari non è niente,
Stanley
però.
was fat and ugly and really stupid. He probably only got the job because of a family connection. That's how stupid he is.
Siamo passati agli
That or with
insulti?
drug money. Also, Stanley is addicted to drugs and hookers.
Siamo passati agli insulti pesanti qua. Cioè, adesso mi sembra di stare
Well, I've
esagerando.
come to a very definite conclusion about what's going on right now. You're dead. You got to this broom closet, explored it a bit, and were just about to leave because there's nothing here, when a physical malady of some sort shut down your central nervous system and you collapsed on the keyboard.
Nah.
Well, in a situation like this, the responsible thing is to alert someone nearby so as to ensure that your body is taken care of before it begins to decompose.
Grazie.
Hello? Anyone who happens to be nearby? The person at this computer is dead.
Sono da solo in
He
casa
or
al
she
momento.
has fallen prey to any number of your countless human physiological vulnerabilities. It's indicative of the long-term sustainability of your species. Please remove their corpse from the area and instruct another human to take their place at the computer, making sure they understand basic first-person video game mechanics and filling them in on the history of narrative tropes in video gaming, so that the irony and insightful commentary of this game is not lost on them.
Ah no, vengono
When you've done
apprezzati.
that, just step out into the hallway. Ah, second player. It's good to have you on board. I guarantee you can't do any worse than the person who came before you.
Sono sempre io. Ma ti sfiderò.
Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Ma io volevo andare giù. Cioè, mi ispira. Non mi ispira. Che è sta roba qua? Ah, ok. Ma se vado di qua? No? Va bene.
But Stanley just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss, admitting he had left his post during work hours. He might be fired for that. And in such a competitive economy, why had he taken that risk? All because he believed everyone had vanished? His boss would think he was crazy. And then something occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy. All of my co-workers blinking mysteriously out of existence in a single moment for no reason at all? None of it made any logical sense. And as Stanley pondered this, he began to make other strange observations. For example, why couldn't he see his feet when he looked down? Why did doors close automatically behind him wherever he went? And for that matter, these rooms were starting to look pretty familiar. Were they simply repeating? No, Stanley said to himself, this is all too strange. This can't be real. And at last, he came to the conclusion that had been on the tip of his tongue. He just hadn't found the words for it. "I'm dreaming!" he yelled.
Ah già,
"This
ovvio.
is all a dream."
Ma
What a
certo!
relief Stanley felt to have finally found an answer, an explanation. His co-workers weren't actually gone. He wasn't going to lose his job. He wasn't crazy after all. And he thought to himself, I suppose I'll wake up soon. I'll have to go back to my boring real-life job pushing buttons. I may as well enjoy this while I'm still lucid. So he imagined himself flying and began to gently float above the ground.
Wow. No, no,
Then
inquietante,
he imagined
inquietante.
himself soaring through space on a magical starfield, and it too
Che
appeared.
figo.
It was so much fun, and Stanley marveled that he had still not woken up. How was he remaining so lucid? And then perhaps the strangest question of them all entered Stanley's head. One he was amazed he hadn't asked himself sooner. Why is there a voice in my head dictating everything that I'm doing and thinking? Now the voice was describing itself being considered by Stanley, who found it particularly strange.
Yeah.
I'm dreaming about a voice Describing me, thinking about how it's describing my thoughts, he thought. And while he thought it all very odd and wondered if this voice spoke to all people in their dreams, the truth was that, of course, this was not a dream. How could it be? Was Stanley simply deceiving himself, believing that if he's asleep, he doesn't have to take responsibility for himself? Stanley is as awake right now as he's ever been in his life. Now, hearing the voice speak these words was quite a shock to Stanley. After all, he knew for certain, beyond a doubt, that this was in fact a dream. Did the voice not see him float and make the magical stars just a moment ago? How else would the voice explain all that? This voice was a part of himself too. Surely, if he could just... He would prove it. He would prove that he was in control, that this was a dream.
Ovvio,
So he
assolutamente.
closed his eyes gently, and he invited himself to wake up. He felt the cool weight of the blanket on his skin, the press of the mattress on his back, the fresh air of a world outside this one. Let me wake up, he thought to himself. I'm through with this dream. I wish it to be over. Let me go back to my job. Let me continue pushing the buttons. Please, it's all I want. I want my apartment, and my wife, and my job. All I want is my life exactly the way it's always been. My life is normal. I am normal. Everything will be fine. I am okay.
Non sembra, zio, non sembra minimamente che tu sia ok. E siamo ancora qui, sì, nel mio ufficio preferito.
Stanley began screaming. Please, someone, wake me up. My name is Stanley. I have a boss. I have an office. I am real. Please, just someone tell me I am real. I must be real. I must be. Can anyone hear my voice? Who am I? Who am I? And everything went black.
Sono morto. No, mi sa che sono impazzito, definitivamente.
This is the story of a woman named Mariella.
E chi è Mariella adesso?
Mariella woke up on a day like any other. She arose, got dressed, gathered her belongings, and walked to her place of
Beata
work.
lei.
But on this particular day, her walk was interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town talking and screaming to himself, and then collapsed dead on the
Mi
sidewalk.
ricorda qualcuno?
And although she would soon turn to go call for an ambulance, for just a few brief moments she considered the strange man. He was obviously crazy. This much she knew. Everyone knows what crazy people look like. And in that moment, she thought to herself how lucky she was to be normal. I am sane. I am in control of my mind. I know what is real and what isn't. It was comforting to think this, and in a certain way, seeing this man made her feel better. But then she remembered the meeting she had scheduled for that day. The very important people whose impressions of her would affect her career, and by extension, the rest of her life. She had no time for this, so it was only a moment that she stood there, staring down at the body. And then she turned and ran.
Cioè, abbiamo fatto felice qualcuno. Meno male, almeno quello, cioè. Che cazzo... non ho detto quella parola. Sta succedendo in questo ufficio. È tutto così disordinato rispetto a prima. Ma, signore e signori, io direi che possiamo finirla qui. Nella prossima puntata andremo a scoprire cosa sta succedendo in questo ufficio, perché più non seguiamo le indicazioni del narratore, più il gioco sembra impazzire, distruggersi e farci fare scelte strane. Scopriremo se il narratore effettivamente vuole o ucciderci o salvarci, ma soprattutto se continuerà a insultarci così tanto. Quindi io vi invito a iscrivervi al canale, a lasciare mi piace, a commentare, a condividere il video, attivare la campanellina degli avvisi per rimanere sempre aggiornati, e noi ci vediamo nel prossimo episodio.